Hi and welcome. This is Mark Taylor, Managing Director of KeysToSuccessClub.com. This is part of our property series, and today we're going to be interviewing Jack and Tamar from InnovativeRealEstateInvestments.com, and they're going to talk today about vendor financing and this innovative strategy. Hi and welcome. This is Mark Taylor, Managing Director of KeysToSuccessClub.com, and I'm joined today with Jack Dempsey and Tamar Goldstein. Welcome, and thank you for joining us. Now, this is going to be a really special edition because we're going to be talking today about vendor financing. Now, Jack and Tamar, they run a real estate business with a difference, and they specialize in this great thing called vendor financing, and what they claim is that it gives you positive cash flow from day one. Now, as a real estate investor, that's definitely of interest. So there's been a lot in the media about this. It's been around for a while, but I really wanted to tap into some experts to understand what this is all about. If you want to find more about their business, you need to go to InnovativeRealEstateInvestments.com. But what I wanted to do today is talk about the concept of vendor finance, and we've been promised an open, neutral, objective interview to ask those deep-seated questions you had on vendor financing, what it is, how a deal works, what are the risks and benefits, how you might go about it, and they've also promised their 6 years of tips and strategies at the end of this video they're going to share with us. So what I might do is, first of all, just get them to introduce themselves, and then we'll get into the nuts and bolts. So vendor financing, Jack, tell us about the industry.
It's quite big, not as big as the normal real estate world, but it's got a long and honourable history, particularly in Australia. It's much more prevalent in the country than it is in the city, because banks don't like the country very much, and farmers and rural people have difficulty getting loans, so it's much more common there. But there are a lot of people doing it in the city now. It's becoming more popular because of the difficulty of some people getting loans.
Okay, so we'll talk a little bit more about vendor financing. There have been some terms there about the difficulty of getting loans. I'm going to go into an example of exactly what vendor financing is. How did you guys get involved in vendor financing, and how many years have you been doing it?
Well, we've been involved in vendor financing for about 6 years now, and we started off as your typical investor buying an investment property, buy and hold. In fact, we bought a couple, and we discovered that it took money out of our bank account rather than giving us money back in, which wasn't what we thought would happen. And so we changed our strategy. We connected with a friend. I connected with a friend online who told me about a real estate mogul in the States, and we did a course with him for about 6 months. We rang up at 4 a.m. every fortnight to get the lowdown. We were dedicated. And eventually we did our first deal when, through a friend of a friend, his son couldn't get a bank loan. So we sent him out to look for houses, and we vendor financed him into his first home. So that's how we started off. Then we went to a boot camp and learnt more about the Australian way of doing things. And we bought a few houses and unsold them, but we found that it took about 9 months between houses because we weren't very experienced at selling real estate. It's a whole other skill that you need to gain to do it, of course. And then when one of our potential buyers asked us, could we finance him into a home that he could find for himself, we thought, well, that could be a good thing to do. So we looked at his income and we sent him out to look for a house based on what he could afford to pay, taking into account that we told him we'd mark it up 20% because we have to make a profit. He agreed to that, and then we found an investor who wanted positive cash flow, and he bought the house for him, and we immediately on-sold it to our buyer on an instalment contract or a wrap. And that was the beginning of our business, and we've gone from strength to strength since then.
So, as I understand, you guys are full-time in the vendor finance arena and currently create enough income for themselves to live off that.
That's right, yes. Yeah, we're full-time. This is our full-time business. Yes.
So it's I always like to hear from people who are actually succeeding what they set out to do, so that this is not just advice, but also people who are actually achieving success in this particular field, which is why I was really interested to interview these two. So there's been some words talked about in there. Now, most people understand getting bank loans, i.e. you go buy a property, you get a bank loan, and away you go. Can you explain for everyone what vendor financing, we hear terms like vendor financing, rent to buy, wrapping. Can you give us the 101 on what all these means in terms of a deal?
Vendor finance is an overall phrase meaning that the vendor of a property, the person selling a property, a goods or a service, provides the finance to the purchaser. As I mentioned earlier, this can be done in any arena, office, furniture and houses as we do it. Within the technique of vendor financing, there are smaller techniques, one of which is what we do, instalment contracts or RAPs. Another one is called rent to buy. Rent to buy means a buyer will rent a house first to see if it's all working out, and then later on they'll say, okay, now I'm going to buy it today. So
they also take out an option.
They have their interest. They have their interest secured on an option. The technique that we use, which is an instalment contract, means that the person occupying the house is buying the house right from the beginning. It's really just different legal paperwork. The actual real world effect of it is the same. The same amount of money they pay each week is the same. It's just a legal term that's different.
So it enables, correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm also, this is relatively new for me as well, it enables someone who wants to buy a house but can't get a more traditional loan from a bank to be able to get a loan from an investor.
That's right, because our lending criteria are a lot easier than a bank.
So this is a good one for the next one. Why would I, as an investor, be interested in doing that rather than just going out and buying my own property?
Because you get cash flow from day one, because the way the deal is structured, the occupier of the house is paying more money into the deal each month than is going out to the bank each month. So there's an excess of money, which means that's positive cash flow. More money coming in than is going out. With a normal buy and hold investment, usually you lose money for quite a while until you get the positive growth when you sell the property years later, or if the rental goes up sufficiently, then you'll start to get cash coming in rather than going out. Our vendor finance model feeds you rather than eats you.
So does that mean, in terms of that subject, capital growth, so I know a lot of investors talk about less about the yield and more about the capital growth, does that mean you're excluded from capital growth in a vendor finance deal?
You're not excluded from it. You lock it in by the fact that you buy a property in the morning and you mark it up 20% and you sell the same property in the afternoon. So you've locked in that 20%. If during the period of the deal the capital growth is greater than 20%, well, you've missed out. But the fact that you have locked in the 20% on the day that you do the deal means that you're getting your profit locked in right at the beginning.
To find out more about vendor financing and other property strategies from experts, please go to www.keyssuccessclub.com. Thank you very much.